New challenge, and you probably know this as a coach, that athletes feel like they're more informed, but they can also be more overwhelmed. So they have more numbers at their fingertips, but not always more clarity about what those numbers mean, and probably more importantly, what they should do with those numbers next, what they should do next. And that is where good coaching matters. Hey there, Cam here from Training Talk. Welcome to this week's episode of Endurance Coaching Business. Hope you're all well. Today I'm going to talk about wearables and data, and I'm not going to go into any of the tech about them. I'm just going to cover the idea that more data does not necessarily mean better results. So I'm going to tackle it from a coaching perspective, but also from an athlete's perspective with their wearables and the platforms that they're getting their data from. So I guess the idea is that more data does not mean better results. So endurance coaches and athletes have more data available than ever before, but that does not always make coaching easier, and sometimes it actually creates more noise, more athlete anxiety, and more time spent interpreting scores instead of building confidence in your athletes. So the coaches who stand out are not the ones collecting the most numbers, they're the ones helping athletes make the most sense of those numbers. So athletes have access to sleep scores, HRV, resting heart rate, readiness scores, recovery status, training load, stress, pace, power, cadence, and loads more. And on the surface, that sounds like good technological progress, and that maybe more data should mean better decisions, and better decisions should mean better results, but that's not typically the way that it happens. So for many coaches, more athlete data has created a new challenge, and you probably know this as a coach, that athletes feel like they're more informed, but they can also be more overwhelmed. So they have more numbers at their fingertips, but not always more clarity about what those numbers mean, and probably more importantly, what they should do with those numbers next, what they should do next. And that is where good coaching matters, because the real value is not giving athletes more data to look at, it is helping them make sense of it. So the problem's not the data. Wearable data is cool, it's absolutely useful, I love it. Can help identify trends, highlight changes in recovery, support better conversations around fatigue, and give coaches a layer of context when we're reviewing training response without having to be one-on-one with the athlete. So that's the upside. The problem is what happens when athletes are constantly exposed to a stream of metrics without the right context and knowledge to interpret them properly. So that is when useful information starts to become noise. And we know that athletes are not short on data, but many of them are short on a good perspective of that data. And when perspective is missing, even good data can lead to bad decisions. So more data can create more doubt. So a lot of athletes start using wearables because they want to train smarter, they want more control, they want better recovery, they want more confidence in the process, including the process of your coaching. But in reality, more data often leads to more second guessing, not less. So an athlete wakes up feeling fine, they see a low readiness score, and then they start to worry about the day ahead. They complete an awesome session, but one metric looks off. So now they're questioning whether or not that workout was actually productive. They sleep reasonably well, but their app tells them the recovery is poor, and then suddenly they feel tired before the day's even got going. And as a coach, that really matters, because the athlete is no longer just responding to their training and your feedback, they're responding to the story that their device is telling them. And if every score starts feeling like a verdict, every piece of data feels like a verdict rather than just something to get insight for, then their confidence can quickly disappear. So then that data without context just becomes more noise. So this is where that data falls short, and the platforms that deliver it, they do a really good job of collecting information and presenting it back to athletes, but they're not always good at turning that information into useful action because they don't have the full picture. So a drop in HRV is not automatically meaningful on its own. A sleep score of 71 or whatever a bad sleep score is does not really tell an athlete much without context. And a high training load does not automatically mean that they should change their upcoming sessions. And the important questions are not just what does the data say, it's what should I do now based on that data. And that's where coaches create real value. So good coaching helps athletes understand whether a metric matters, whether it matches the bigger picture, and whether anything actually needs to change based on those metrics. So sometimes the right response is to change things up, to adjust the training. Sometimes the right response is just to stay the course and see what happens next. Sometimes the response is to just stop overthinking one score and focus on consistency. So athletes need more guidance. They don't need more data and more dashboards. And they definitely don't need more metrics. They really need help understanding what actually matters. So they need support answering practical questions like, am I coping well with the training? Is this fatigue normal? Should I change today's session? Am I actually improving over time even though maybe my metrics don't look great? And what should I focus on this week? And probably most importantly, what can I ignore? And this is also an important reminder for coaches as well, that your value is not just writing the training plan, giving feedback. Your value is helping these athletes navigate the process, all of this data, with while keeping confidence in you and your coaching. And that includes helping them handle this growing amount of data that's coming at them every day from all of their devices. So let's talk about anxiety. So athletes, athletes are typically anxious people, many of them, and their training helps them deal with that anxiety. So the last thing you want to do is let them introduce things that can add to increasing that anxiety rather than decreasing it. And data is something that can do that. So for a lot of athletes, wearable data just becomes another source of pressure. So they see a bad sleep score, they feel like that's a failure, low readiness, failure, missed recovery target, failure, high stress, failure, that leads to more stress. And that's not a healthy way to build consistency or confidence in training. So training's not perfect, never is. Coaches know this. Recovery is not tidy. Life affects performance, work, family stress, travel, disrupted routines all play a part, and the devices often don't have access to all of that, but a coach can. So not every low or high score means something is wrong. Not every metric needs a reaction or an overreaction. So if athletes lose trust in their own judgment because they're too focused on these daily numbers, then the data is no longer helping them, it's hindering them. So that is where strong coaching communication matters. And the best coaches will use data to support their own judgment. So the most effective coaches do not ignore all wearable data, but they do not let it drive everything either. So they use it as one input, not the entire story. So that usually means looking at trends over time, comparing the metrics with the actual more qualitative feedback they're getting from their athletes, avoiding overreactions to simple daily fluctuations in that data. Training plan. And so this also brings us to like the athlete's experience with the coaching relationship. And for your coaching business, this is often bigger than a day-to-day performance question. It's also an athlete experience question. So athletes who feel overwhelmed by data often need more reassurance, more communication, and more help staying grounded. And if that support's missing, then they become anxious, disengaged, and uncertain about the process. So uncertainty can lead to danger, because if they're not certain or confident in the program that you're prescribing them, they're less likely to follow it. So athletes who feel clear and supported are far more likely to stay engaged with you and your coaching services. And that's why your interpretation of the data matters so much. It improves the coaching experience, it builds trust, it strengthens retention. And this is one big opportunity for modern endurance coaches to build those relationships with their athletes. Not to overwhelm them with even more information, but to create clarity around the information that they already have. So better coaching beats more data any day of the week. The coaches who stand out the most will not be the ones that talk the most about metrics. They'll be the ones who make coaching feel clear, calm, and useful for their athletes. They'll help their athletes understand what matters. They'll keep focus on more medium and long-term trends instead of the daily noise of the data. They'll use data support better conversations, and they will build confidence in data, not dependency on it. And that is where better coaching lives. So, and that is where stronger coaching businesses are built over the long term, because when the athletes feel supported, they'll stay engaged. When they stay engaged, they stay longer with your coaching. And when coaching feels clear and valuable, it becomes much easier for you to grow beyond just being a provider of a training plan, which is very important in these days of technology and AI and everything else that's happening. So final thoughts: wearables are not going away. You probably will struggle to force your athletes not to use the data, but that's okay, because they can be excellent tools when used well, calmly. But more wearable data definitely does not automatically mean better results or better coaching. And without context, it will just create confusion. Without interpretation, it will create anxiety. Without action, it becomes noise. So that's where the real opportunity for coaches is not to collect more numbers, but it's to help athletes make sense of the numbers they already have. Because great coaching isn't about giving athletes more stuff to look at, it's about helping them move forward with confidence. So it's not just delivering training, creating clarity, building trust, and keeping athletes engaged. So that's it for today. If you're already a Training Talk coach, thank you. If you're not, I'd love you to take a look at our platform, as Training Talks helps coaches bring that coaching, communication, and athlete support all together in one place, so your athletes can stay connected and confident and your business keeps growing. And I will talk to you again next week.